Good evening.
Good
Welcome to Cornerstone Home Inspector Education Center. Tonight we have Lily Antone from the Clog Doctor. We're going to be talking about drainage, sewer lines, and basically what home inspectors should be looking for.
Yes.
Um, and then we will go through this PowerPoint. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to break in. You can unmute yourself or you can type in the chat box. As always, um, if you're just joining us and haven't heard, we have new logos now for after you complete this webinar. Just go to our website under download logos and the password's Cornerstone. So I'll hand it over to Willie.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Willie Antoine, and we're not a big crew. It's just myself and my son, and I have been in the business for about approximately 22 years. I started back in 2003. I've been on my own for about 12 years now. Again, I've accounted a lot of things through my 22 years of experience. So, tonight I'm going to point out on the things that home inspectors should look for because it's pretty obvious that we have a lot of customers that are actually buying like houses with issues, and then especially the ones that are on a fixed income, they only have enough money just actually to put down in the house, and they can't afford any extended repairs, especially with sewers. Now I'm going to give you a prime example of a job that I went to on Saturday. So Saturday, a client contacted me. I went out there for a camera inspection. So the homeowner had hired Bill Jr. to conduct a video inspection. And so they went out there. They had clay pipe. They noticed a few cracks in the line, and then they said, well, the estimate to repair the line is going to be about 12,000. So now the client, she's frantic. She doesn't want to give up that credit. She doesn't want to repair the line. She said, well, I'd like to get a second opinion. So I went out there and ran my camera. Sure enough, the line did have a few cracks. It could exit out the back of the house, goes under a sunroom, makes a left, then goes under the driveway, approximately about 95 feet out. But I was only able to go to about up to 60 feet because in the driveway the line collapsed, and then so the guy actually didn't. I don't think they didn't notice it, but he only went so far as to where the cracks were. So then I said to her, I said, listen, for the amount of money that you're gonna end up spending if you were to repair the line yourself, it's gonna be more than 12,000. I said, you either give them the money or you repair the line because from what I'm seeing, it's anywhere from 18 to 25,000 because they had to reroute the line. They couldn't because under the sunroom, the line cracked and you can't get to it. I mean, you can destroy the sunroom to get to that. You may have to reroute it, and it would cost a lot more than 12,000. So now that customer did do the due diligence. They're gonna get a credit of 12,000. She decided to walk away from it. She didn't want to bother with it because it was gonna cost too much money. So that's why I think it's extremely important that especially for a normal homeowner who's buying a house not knowing what they're buying, that it should be recommended to them. Now what they do is up to them, but I think it should be recommended, and that's the reason why I really push for that. Because again, buying something, I mean, inspectors cannot see it. I mean, obviously you don't have extra visions to see the condition of the lines or the integrity of the lines. So then in that case, all you could do is just flush the toilet a few times, run the sinks, the bathtubs and whatnot, all the fixtures, but you're not going to be able to see any problems. It's hard to tell, especially it's the lines like 40 feet, 50 feet, 60 feet away. So you have plenty of room for the line to actually take the water. So by the time they move in, they start using toilet tissues and whatnot. That's when problems are going to start to arise. So that's why I think it's extremely important that it should be recommended in just every house. And if they don't want to do it, it's up to them. But at least you recommend it. You actually cover your tails. And a lot of times, say, well, the inspector did a bad job. He came out, showed me all this money. Then because I get it all the time, and they're calling me like a month later, 2 weeks later, like 3 months later, they're having problems. I said, well, you know what? They can't see it. All they can actually do is recommend it to you, but they actually can't see a problem like that. So that's why you have to do your due diligence. If they don't recommend it to you, at least you should ask for it. So that's again a prime example. So I don't know if you guys have any questions before I proceed with the next thing.
So right now, no, but I'm going to step in, Willie, and I'll just take over this next slide.
Yeah.
Has to do with state standards, and in Connecticut, the state standards and inspector requirements, according to our guidelines, are to inspect the interior water supply and distribution system, including fixtures and faucets, drain, waste, and vent systems, including all fixtures, the water heating equipment, fuel storage and distribution, drainage sumps, sump pumps, and related piping. Required documentation, which is very important. The inspector shall describe the water supply, drain, waste, and vent piping materials, visible components of on-site well pump systems when applicable, the water heat equipment and energy source. So is the water heater electric? Is it gas? We have to locate the main water shutoff and fuel shutoff valves. Exclusions. We are not required, but we can go above the standard to inspect closed washing machines, wells and pumps, storage related equipment, water conditioning systems, solar water heater systems, fire and lawn sprinkler systems, private waste disposal, instant hot water dispensers, and recreational facilities. The other important thing that I know is missed sometimes is you need to determine whether the water supply and waste disposal is public or private. And we've talked about this in report writing. If the listing agent and everybody tells you that it's public water and public sewer, it's always good to have a disclaimer in the report that they should check with the town first, just to make sure. On numerous occasions, I've had people come back to me and say, I don't have city water, or excuse me, city sewer. I have well or septic. I didn't know this. And that, again, that's not up to us. What I do in my reports is I put per the client, per the field card, per the internet, per whoever, the septic, the waste is public or private. But then I put a disclaimer and say it's your due diligence to call the town hall and verify what the system is.
Correct.
So we'll move on. And if Willie, if you just want to go along here and
Hey, Jim, your PowerPoint's not up.
oh, okay, hold on. How about now?
Negative.
Okay, give me 1 second.
And just to that point, I did a house in Stamford many years ago, and part of it was city sewer, and the addition was on a septic. And we had asked the owner in the basement in front of the buyer if the house is on city sewer, and he said yes. And then they found out later that part of it was septic, and I had to
Now it's up.
make a statement. What do they call it? Do a deposition. So really important to stay on top of that.
Yes,
Okay.
I know. Actually, to jump in the bandwagon, I had a job in Derby, and then that guy, and the report he listed he had sewers, but in fact he didn't. He actually was in septic tank. Now he had a clog up a couple months back after that, and he went out to Home Depot and rented a SNCC, and he got stuck in the septic tank. Didn't know where he got stuck, so he called me in, and I'm running my camera. I said, "Listen, you on septic?" He said, "No, the homeowner said it was sewers, and the entire time it was septic. They never knew about it." So I ended up having to look at the septic that got in the back of the house, and he had to dig it up and all that stuff. And he was upset, and because he thought he had sewers the entire time, but in reality he did have septic tank. So that's why sometimes it's hard to tell, especially if it's already listed on there.
Yeah. So I have some stuff about here that about yourself, but you sort of went through that, and yes. I have a slide here for you, a service overview, if you'd like to go through that on what you do.
Now, if you guys, I don't know if you guys know anything about trench test repair. That's something also we perform. Now, trench test repair is something that I encourage, especially like the house I described earlier with the sunroom. Now, the only time that's the best way to go is actually when the pipe is in good condition, meaning that there's no offset or like a mechanical issue, or if there's no bellies or dips in the line, because again, the liner takes the same shape as the existing line. So therefore, if the pipe has any misalignments or any bellies, then that's not the best way to go. Then you have to go to the other way, which is actually digging the line up. So that's the only time that's not the best option. You have to go with the traditional dig at that point. Or you may have to reroute sometimes. Now, let's see. Now for general plumbing, is that something you'd like for me to go over as well?
Sure, whatever you do, it's
Yeah.
fine.
With general plumbing, so for the most part, I mean, depending on the how old the house is, things you might want to look for, especially with the let's say the tub showers, for instance, the three handle showers, those things that are becoming obsolete. And the reason for being is that when you're taking a shower, someone flushes the toilet, run the tap, and he's gonna get burned. So people are trying to get away with that and goes with a single lever. You use a pressure balancing valve, which is typically inexpensive. Anywhere it ranges between $1,200 to $1,500 if they like to, if that's something they like to consider. I mean, that's with old houses, like the one I did on Saturday, and that's it's an old house with three handle shower valve. So then that's something that you may consider. And emergency. Let's see. What else would you like to go over?
How about drain cleaning solutions?
Drain cleaning solutions. I do two. I could do it several ways depending on which fixtures that we're working on. So let's say we're working on main lines. Main lines traditionally I use a snake whenever possible. But I have a hydrojetter puts out about 4,000 psi. It's designed because sometimes when people hear pressure, you think that my pipe's going to deteriorate. As a matter of fact, it's the best thing for the line. Rather than having this thing that's constantly banging with the pointy tips that actually could puncture the line, the jetter is actually it's smooth sailing. It doesn't puncture the line. It's just a similar amount of pressure that goes through the line, and it won't puncture it. Especially with if you have this corrugated pipe, when you have the outside storm drains, those are the best thing. You put a snake in there, it will puncture it. So then the jetter, sometimes it is the best option. It works best on roots. It works best on grease. Also, the snake only stirs things up. So, and especially sometimes there are times that in the sewer line, you call that actually has so much toilet tissue in there. You need water to flush it out. The snake could go through it; it will close it right back up. Same thing with the grease also. So the jetter sometimes 99% of the time it's the best way to go because it's 100% guaranteed. Not only it cuts the roots 100%, and also that it will flush the lines out as well as that in terms of toilet tissue and grease and so forth.
How about Frenchless sewer repair? Is that something you guys do?
Yeah, that's the one I talked about earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something we do perform, but generally it's expensive. I mean, it's like $200 per linear foot. So, and in order to perform that, you have to have a straight shot. And if you have any tie-ins, then you have to go back and cut them out. Then it gets a little bit expensive. But generally, that's something that we have to go outside and dig, expose the line and then shoot it straight out from our side, from our side out to the sewer, and then tie it from there. So it's not the best way to go sometimes, only when the pipe is not accessible, because it's sometimes more expensive than traditional digs.
If you're watching this as a recorded event, your viewing code is Septic 2025.
Yes.
Okay. Basically, I'll go through this.
Yes.
I put some goals for the webinar. Building knowledge. Willie's going to help with identifying issues, and then how to report properly. So let's move along. So go ahead, Willie. Drainage system basics.
Okay, for drainage system basics, let's say bathroom sinks. Generally, you guys walk in, and the first thing you're gonna do is run the tap. So if it backs up within I say 5 to 10 seconds, that means the clog is up close. That means it's just under the stopper. So if it takes like anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, that means it's downstream. Okay, and then and as for the toilets, generally, they flush okay unless it's an older toilet that they use a lot more. They use a lot more water, like 3.5 gallons. That anything from, I think it was 1992 is when they started cutting down the volume. But any toilet before that, I think they anywhere from 3.5 gallons to 4 gallons per minute, and which consume a lot of water. And people do like them though. Believe it or not, people do like them because they don't cause clogs as often, because they use more water to flush out the toilet tissue. As a matter of fact, I had the job a restaurant in Shelton, and the guy had these older toilets for years, never had a problem. The moment he changed the toilets to a 1.6 gallon, the line started clogging up because there's not enough water to flush out all the tissue, and then it kept backing up. He says, with 2 months, it gets a clog. So then it has its pros and cons, but then again, you're just using a lot more water. Okay. Now, branch drain lines are considered to be anything other than the toilet. So like the washing machines, the tubs, the sinks, any bar sinks, the laundry sinks, all those are branch lines. Anything that branches off the main. The toilet is always sitting on the main itself, which is anywhere from 3 to 4 inch. That's what you're gonna see inside of a house. Vent stacks and vent pipes are very important because without the venting system, the pipe doesn't work. Think of a straw. You put some water in there and then you block the top of it, the water will not drain. So it is extremely important to have a venting system. Now, S traps normally under bathroom sinks are not permissible because they can siphon out. And then if you see any S traps under any sinks, the best thing to do is just to normally have because it will siphon out. Cleanouts. Normally you'll see that on any branch lines like a kitchen sink, a bathtub, an unfinished basement. You'll see them because sometimes it's not all the time they're exposed. So then any cleanouts you see that's been worn out, that means it's been removed a few times. They've been having clogs. So those are things that you want to look for, especially on the main. You see teeth marks on the brass. You see splashes on the wall, so that's signs that those cleanouts have been removed a few times, and then they've been having flags in the past. So now lateral lines to city sewers, again, that those are the main lines, like the one I did on Saturdays. So then they're typically Orangeburg piping. Orangeburg piping actually they're made from wood pulp and pitch. Pitch is like pretty much like tar. So then those are the pipes you're gonna see, and then you're gonna see it's Bridgeport is known for a concrete pipe, clay pipe, and also cast iron. Then Orangeburg is it's largely seen in Stratford and Norwalk and some in Milford. So and then you're gonna have clay, cast iron, and now the most common is SDR, which is PVC Schedule 35. It comes in a green color shape. Those are the most common pipe you'll see nowadays. Guys are using because they're lighter to work with, and they're flexible as well. So now gravity flow. Everything goes downhill, as all know it, and the pipe typically needs about 1/4 inch per foot in order to work properly. And the least you'll see is 1/8 per foot, and that normally on the ground when they don't have a lot of room to work with. So they could go 1/8, but typically it's 1/4 inch per foot. Anything that's back pitch will not work properly. It will cause blockages and so on and so forth. So proper venting is the same thing as the drainage system. It has to be pitched properly, 1/4 inch per foot as well. It has to exit on the roof, which is normally a 3-inch pipe. I've seen guys do 2-inch if they allow it, but typically the whole house venting system has to be a 3-inch. You could go up 2-inch, but exit 3-inch. As for water traps, maintain seal. You have to have a good trap seal, and the only time you lose your trap seal is when there's no proper venting system. And then at that point, sewer gases entering the living space, and then that's when you start having a problem. And also, anytime you have a soaking tub that has been used in months, this is 6 months, the water will evaporate eventually, and then you lose your trap seal. Then you're gonna have sewer gases, and people say, "Oh, it smells like rotten eggs in here," or "It smells like dead bodies in there." But the thing is, you lose your trap seal, and that's the end of that, and the house will smell pretty badly. So it is recommended that they use all the fixtures. Even if they don't use it, at least run water every 2 to 3 months in the line to keep it maintained, so that the water doesn't evaporate out of it. Now, branch lines connects to the larger pipe. So the branch lines, so again, bathtubs or branch lines, shower or branch lines, kitchen sink, bathroom sinks, or anything else from 1.5 to 2-inch or branch lines. So, and then again, the toilet seats on the main, which is typically 3 to 4-inch.
Willie, just can you talk a little about the whole house? They're still out there. The whole house plumbing trap.
The traps, the house traps.
Yeah, and those
So, yeah,
there's individual ones, and then you said off the side.
Right. So now the house traps in some towns is not recommended. Like Greenwich, you cannot. If you remove them, you have to put them back. It's the only town so far that's pushing for it. But every other towns, they're not recommended because that's what they call traps. They trap everything. Tissue gets stuck in there. grease builds up inside of it. So then in that case, I always tell my client, listen, it's not recommended you could remove it because it's causing clogs every time and every now and then. So get rid of it. You remove it, you put a clear on in its place, you're good to go. But granite, you cannot remove the tire shop. They have to remain in there. Even if you remove the cast iron, you could put PVC, which is the more like a smooth surface, but you have to put it back in. You cannot eliminate the house traps in granite, period. Any other questions? Yes.
So basically what we have in the next slide is drain versus sewer versus septic. Well, this is pretty basic stuff. I don't think that we need to go over it. We know what drain lines are. We know what sewer lines are, and we know what septic systems are for the most part. So I'm going to skip ahead. And then basically what home inspectors can see.
Understand plumbing. So you're gonna see basically three things actually. You're gonna see two water lines, hot and cold. Hot always on the left, cold on the right, and you're gonna see a trap. So the trap, again, S traps, I think I said about it earlier, they're obsolete. Any S traps, they have to be removed because they do siphon very often. So then you have to see a trap because normally it goes out on the wall or it could go to the floor with a mechanical vent, which is known as Studer, but Studer is the name brand, but we got a mechanical vent. Again, the vent has to be above the flood rim. And that's all you're gonna see under a sink. It shouldn't be any more than that. Okay. So basement exposed pipes, you're gonna see, of course, the water main, the water main in the basement. You're gonna see the sewer, the sewer line itself. Actually, the sewer starts 10 feet from the house, but you're gonna see the drain main, which is typically 3 to 4 inch. It could be either cast iron, copper, or plastic. Those are the only three I've seen in the house. Although I have seen clay under the ground, but it always comes up cast iron. So then, and also the cast iron is very brittle. It could crack on top sometimes. When you see those run, like horizontally in the ceiling, always check the top. If you have a mirror, just run it on the top of it, because if they crack, you'll never see any leak onto the backside, or if you get a smell. So then it's always good if you have a mirror, just run the mirror on top of it, make sure it's not cracked. And as far as copper goes, they do erode over time on the bottom, but as long as there's no leaks, then you're good to go. Now, floor drains. It's not too common, but you do see them every now and then. But the floor drains, some of them do connect to the sewer line. Sometimes when the sewer lines run in the ground, they will put a trap in there. If they don't, then they end up going back into the basement. It's just for, if you have a little bit of water in the basement, so it goes under the foundation. So at that point, then it goes right back out. So that's pretty much for the floor drains. Okay. Then the water heaters, the water heater drain connections. Drain connection is gonna see anything from PEX to copper. I mean, those are the only two things you're gonna see. So with the PEX, it has to be 18 inches of 18 inches copper, and then from there it could go to 18 inches copper. Then from there it could go to PEX. I mean, I've seen some guys coming up right off the top of the water heater with the PEX. It is not up to code because it gets too hot on top and it could blow off, and that's why you cannot have the PEX directly on top of the heater. It has to be 18 inches above, and then from there you could take off with the PEX. So
really, on the basement exposed pipes, the electrical conduit schedule 40.
Yes.
That's a no-go too, right?
No-go. Yes.
Okay.
That's a no-go. Okay.
What's outside our scope? There are lines we can see. So the next slides here, and basically I'll go through this. What's outside our scope of inspection? Underground lateral lines.
Yes.
Pipes.
Yes. That's when I come in.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's where I come in. So, and that's when I come in. If you guys do, actually, I have the same camera. It's amazing. So, that's when I come in, and if you refer it and the client decides to do it, and that's, I come in and perform it. And then usually it could be performed through the best way, actually, through a clean out. If you have access to a clean out, we could actually open and go from there, especially if the line's long, then you do need to clean out. And I've done it through roofs. And there's no clean out, then you got to go on the roof vent and push it from there. But it becomes very hard to push the camera through. If you have too many vents, and then you can't get out to the sewer septic tank, it makes it a little tough. But the clean outs are the best port of entry. Sometimes it's the toilet, and again, the existing homeowner may not want you to move the toilet, and so it could get a little complicated with that. So
Can you talk about gravity and drainage flow?
yes, yeah. Again, earlier I said that, the drainage needs to be a quarter-inch per foot towards the septic tank and towards the sewer. Any bellies will create buildup over time, and it eventually cause a blockage. So the first pipe slope is the right way. The second one is actually, which is probably 1/8, and you see you have some liquid on the bottom, and then that in itself would also create buildup. And the third one, which is 1/2 inch per foot, is not recommended simply because when you do flush the toilet, the water rushes out too quickly, and then the tissue stays behind, and that's how you end up with a clog. So you need the water to flow the same, as fast as the tissue, so you could bring it out to wherever, to the sewer or the septic tank.
Perfect. Common issues. We have tree roots.
Yes, very common. And tree roots penetrate mostly the clay pipes, the Orangeburg pipes, the concrete pipes, and also a train site, which is also known as asbestos pipe. So those in a cast iron also, I've seen that happen a couple of times in cast iron. If they had a bad poor lead joint, then it could enter the cast iron. But plastic, I've seen that happen. So even with the new SDR, because they didn't seal it properly, because the roots would actually find its way one way or another. All you need is just one string, and then it blows from. It's like cancer; it blows from there. So then, anytime you have a cracked pipe and then you have any trees close to it, it's gonna find its way through. And as you can see, those pipes are, it cracks up, it just wraps around and cracks it, and it goes right through, and then it infested from that point. And that's how you end up with a clog. It's the roots itself, it catches everything, and then there's your clog.
How common are belly pipes?
Common belly pipe is when the ground settles. So when the ground settles, they lay the pipe, you didn't pack it properly. Over time, the ground settles. As it settles, then the pipe sinks. And then that's how you end up with that dip. It creates a dip in the line, and then with that dip, it's just as bad as a pipe with no pitch, because the water sits there 24/7. It builds up, and then that's how you end up with a clog eventually. Because people, with grease, I don't pour grease down the line, but soap has grease in it. Then the pots and the dishes, they have grease. So it just over time it builds up and it accumulates in the line.
Gotcha. Okay, let's see what we got. Slow drains, common causes.
Yes, slow drains is a sign of a clog, and especially with the bathroom sinks, because you have toothpaste, you have soap scums, you have hair, which is very common. I've had people, women, they brush their hair, you just wash it down the drain. Worst thing you could ever do is eventually it's going to get caught in there and cause a clog. And then, how you test it, you run the sink, 5 seconds, boom, it builds up. That means it's right on the stopper, so that the clog is closed. If you run it like 30 seconds to a minute, then it starts to build up, and that's where the clog is down further in the line. It needs to be snipped out. So that's pretty much here. Grease buildups, you're gonna see in kitchen sink with no pitch, the zero pitch. You're gonna have a lot of grease in there, and those are they're extremely hard to snake, extremely hard to clear. Because you go in there, the grease opens up, it closes right back. It's like lard. You go in there, it closes right back up again. And sometimes we have to put a blow bag in there to force the grease out. So foreign objects is something that's mostly you see in the toilets. Because my son, he works with me. He's not here, but he used to flush them down the toilets all the time. And when that happens, you got to vacuum it out because you don't want to force it down the line because it could cause a problem. Or we move the toilet to move the foreign object. Partial blockage downstream is something that normally you would see that you run water, heard a gurgling sound, and then it goes away. And then it goes on. So, the partial blockage does not go away. It's something that has to be rectified. So, what gurgling sounds in the toilet or in the sink? In the toilet is a sign that there's a clog. If you're running, like say you're running the bathroom sink, you're running the bathtub, it's gurgling in the toilet, it's a sign that the main line itself is backing up. Because remember, the toilets are hooked up directly on the main. So if you run taking a shower upstairs, gurgling in the kitchen sink downstairs, that means there's a branch line that's clogged, which is a common pipe between the two. So then you snake the kitchen sink, that clears that problem, and then you go from there. Because sometimes it overflows out of there. It'll flow out of the kitchen sink. Somebody's taking a shower and they come downstairs in the basement, in the kitchen, it flooded the kitchen. So which I have seen that also. So if you have multiple slow drains, doesn't mean that the main itself is backing, because that's I think my main's backing up because all my drains are backing up. No, not necessarily, because those are branch lines. The tub could be slow, the kitchen sink could be slow, the shower could be slow, the washing machine could be slow. Doesn't mean that the main side is backing up. Those are individual clogs. So, and chemical drain cleaners, I'm not big on them. I've seen people use them. You know what kills me is when they say, "Oh, guaranteed to clear the clog." Yeah, that's why I'm here. They don't really work on often. To me, the only way those will work, that's if you have a slow clog. You pour it down in the drain, then it finds the clog, and then it work through it. But if the line, because the thing is, the water sits in the sink, and you pour the whatever that the declogger in there, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to sit there. So that kind of defeats the purpose. But again, those things are 99% of the time they just don't work.
Gotcha. We had talked already about tree root intrusion, so we're going to skip this slide. And can you talk about different types of cracks here? We've got hairline, fractures, and collapses.
Yes. So you're going to see that most often in clay pipes, because clay pipes are brittle. They will crack over time. Like the one I did Saturday, and that's the one that Bill Jr. the guys picked out. And yes, it did have a bunch of hairline cracks. If you have any trees close by, that's just a route for trees to get into, and then they'll just infest from that point on. And that's pipes that are brittle. And then plus also Orangeburg also brittle. They will crack it and also get roots in there as well. Cast iron very not very often.
All right, let's go to our next slide. Back pitch pipe. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, back pitch pipe is anything that is not a quarter inch per foot. So if you have a back pitch, actually, I'm going to give you an example. House in Westport was, it was the existing house was demolished. Then they built a brand new house up 55 feet out to the curb. They put a whole brand new line, but they didn't replace the rest of it, which actually under the road. So now what happened is they had Orangeburg piping, and it just disconnected from there. He had a backup, and on a Sunday, of course, Sunday night, it never fails. And then I went out there. The 15 foot of pipe the left was totally back pitched towards the house, totally back pitched. So he spent $8,000 still. I mean, just to repair the part that's disconnected, but the back pitch still there. Now he's got to spend more money to have the line actually replaced because it's back pitched towards the house. They couldn't do it that day, but they only did a quick repair. So it is extremely important that the line is pitched properly. Otherwise, again, the water sits there, creates buildup, and eventually will cause a blockage.
Gotcha. We talked about belly pipes because it's the ground settles.
Yes.
Grease and debris clogs. We've talked about this. Cooking oils and fats, food particles, ground. I always tell my clients with a garbage disposal with septic, it's a real problem because people feel it's a garbage can.
Yes, you know what? If people are just lazy, they just grind everything in there. You name it. I say, you know what? If you have any trouble with your garbage, just put them in there. You better off, because that's why I'm here. Because you put bones in there, veggies, eggshell, you name it, everything they put in there. Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a luxury. I don't think that's something you should have in the house, to be honest with you.
So if you're watching this as a recorded event, the next viewing code is water 4598.
Yes.
Okay, can you talk about odors?
Yes, odors is something that you get with traps normally that are not properly vented. So any trap that is not properly vented will be actually siphoned out. And dry traps are normally traps that fixtures that don't get used very often. Like I said, like a soaking tub. Someone has a full shower in the bathroom and a sink, and then they use the soaking tub. And I've had that a few times. They flush your toilet, you could actually hear the water rushing through the drain. I said, "Look," and the house stinks. I said, "You don't smell that?" I said, "Yeah, I don't know what it is." I said, "Well, it's your soaking tub. You never use it." And prime it, and boom, you're done. So then dry traps are fixtures that haven't been used for at least 3 to 6 months. It will dry over time. And venting problems, they do get clogged, but not very often. I've had a few of them that actually were clogged, and so then I have to go on the roof and actually flush them out. And the one that was actually going straight down, those don't clog. But as a matter of fact, Stan had a clogged vent one time, and I went to his house. The kitchen, the bathroom sink was clogged, and then come to find out the vent was clogged. So I had to go on the roof to snake that. So it happens. When they run the sink into the vent, it drops down and there's nothing above it, then it will get clogged up, but not very often. It's just like maybe like one. It's just like not very often. Bird's nest. I haven't seen that in my 22 years. I haven't seen that any in the pipes, but I have put some animals out of the line still. Break and waste lines, leak odors, and so surrounding rounds. Most of the times, if the pipes are buried deep in the ground, you probably won't see it. But with clay pipes that have holes on the bottom, you will eventually see it when they're close by the house, though. When they're close by the house, which I have seen a few houses like that, they have water coming from the foundation end. So that means the leak is close, and that's when we have to run a camera and actually pinpoint where the hole is, and then we could patch it from inside in. So that way, that solves that. We've done a few of those.
Hey, Willie, we've got a question for you here from one of our inspectors. If we see a blister on cast iron, is it always failed? Should we recommend replacing the section or all of it? Or
I mean, I would say all of it, just because it was put in all at the same time. It's a sign that is failing. So, I mean, in that case, I would definitely considering replacing the entire thing just to be on the safe side.
Same thing when you see those little stalactites that, that's a failure of the pipe.
It's a failure, exactly. So it's a sign. Then at that point, you don't, if you want to play with it, that's fine. But I would say definitely yes, I replaced it.
Can you comment on gurgling and bubbling sounds?
Gurgling and bubbling sound is a sign of a clog in the making. So let's say, for instance, which that's how most people realize they have a clog. If someone is running the washing machine and it starts to gurgle in the toilet, that's your main line backing up automatically, because the toilet's sitting on the main. Because water gurgles from the lowest point, which is the toilet in that case, if it's the main. Now, if somebody's taking a shower upstairs on the second floor, and then they have a kitchen sink downstairs and they're gurgling in the sink, that means they have the lines is a common line between the two, and then that common pipe is clogged, and eventually it will come up out of the sink.
Could it be bad venting too?
Bad venting will do it, but also if you have a blockage, because if you have a blockage, most of the time, because you got to remember, there's enough water to flow on the bottom for the air to flow on top. So if you have a partial blockage, that will cause the water to rise to the top, so there's no room for the air to travel. So that will create a gurgle. So once you clean it, the water level drops, then the air will travel on top. So then that will eliminate that. So it's not every time there's a bad venting, but you always would want to go, the first wire to snake it first. If that doesn't solve it, then the next step is a venting problem.
Willie, I got a quick question for Scott, because I want it from a home inspector's point of view.
Yeah.
On this slide here, it says run water in all fixtures, flush toilets while watching other fixtures. When you inspect, do you run all the fixtures at once? Do you stress the system that much?
No, I mean, if there's a problem, you won't be able to pinpoint it. That's the only downside. So you have to do them one at a time. So once you run every individual fixtures by themselves and nothing affects the other, then you could overwhelm it at that point. So when you overwhelm, that actually affects the main outside, either to the septic tank or to the sewer. You're trying to overwhelm it to see if anything backs up. But we have to do each fixtures individually to see if they have a problem, and go from there. Because if one affects the other, you wouldn't be able to pinpoint it.
Okay. Well, sorry about that, Scott. All right, let's go. Soggy yards.
That's normally you see that in septic tanks, with septic tanks. And the septic tank that the fields are failing, yes, it will be saggy. Not only saggy, but smelly. It's very common. And that means your field is bad. It's the water is not going in the ground properly. And you're looking about buku money to actually have your field inspected and also replaced. So it's not something you see very often with houses that are on sewer, but only with houses that are on septic tanks.
Gotcha. Okay. Stains and standing water indoors.
Anytime you see water stains in the ceiling, it's a sign either there was a leak that healed. Because some leaks do heal over time, some don't. It's a constant leak. They're very slow, but it's a constant leak. Especially, anything that's underneath the toilet. It could be the wax is bad. It could be just the pipe is bad. So in that case, it's a sign there's a leak. Or every time someone takes a shower, you see a leak, water coming down. So it's definitely a sign. So then anytime you see a stain, it's definitely it's a sign of a leak, and that should be remedied. Jim, you there? I think we lost you.
He froze up.
Jim, you're frozen.
Yes, he's froze.
Froze up. At least he's got a happy face on him. So you want to keep going on?
You want to go back?
You want?
Wait, I'm texting him. Hold on.
Okay.
Our moderators died here.
I know, right? We don't want that. Not on live on the live,
Well,
So you can standing
Go
water
on.
fixtures. You want to keep going? Well,
Yeah.
until we get back, because you just on damp or wet areas.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, work flooring, something you see very often in kitchen areas. And that's when the kitchen sink actually have a leak under the sink. A slow leak you can't see, like in front of the kitchen sink, like in front of the cabinets, the doors. You know, see, anytime you see a warp, that means that they've been having a small leak underground. Okay, I lost my my
yeah, he's going to reset.
Okay.
He's back now. So
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So we finish with standing water indoors?
we're still on that one slide, Jim.
Okay.
Whatever
Sorry,
that
continue.
was. Well, there's nothing on here.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't
Yeah,
see it? All right.
the PowerPoint's not up.
Yeah.
All right, give me 1 second.
Did
Yeah,
you
a little
lose
bit
power,
weather.
Jim? Is that what happened?
It's raining outside.
We got a little bit of weather here. Just give me 1 second.
So Will, I figure right. Whoop, here he comes.
There it comes. Okay.
Okay.
Keep going.
Let me get back down here.
Yeah, keep going.
Sorry, tree root, ballot odors, gurgling, soggy, standing water.
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
There we go.
Yes, Scott, you good?
Yeah, no, I just was going to try to fill the time while you were away.
Yeah.
We're good.
It can damp or wet areas on walls. Normally that's a leak coming from outside. So then so you probably want to look the outside drainage systems, the storm drains or the underground drainage system. And a lot of time when you have heavy rains, they tend to overflow. So then when that does happen, then that means you're gonna have water down in the basement, and you see any cracks, stress cracks on the walls or floors, and that definitely they're getting water. And you might have to put a sump pump, or you have to the outside drainage system to looked at, and I do camera inspection for those as well, and then go from there. So standing water near fixtures, it's not a good sign. Of course, it's a sign of a leak. Again, that should be remedied at some point and have it inspected in the running water. Just check the valves. Check any kind of deep area, and that means there's a sign of leak. And you'd be surprised. Sometimes some leaks do show, sometimes they don't. They only have a certain times would actually show themselves, and then those are the hard to find leaks and hard to repair leaks. Mold and mildew, yes.
No, go ahead.
Mold and mildew growth, is that something I see mostly in basement area that are damped. But if you have a slow leak, which I've seen in the past, where the copper line exit out the foundation, they have a slow leak on the bottom, but they didn't know what it was. So then it kind of ran throughout the basement, all the way around the basement. They have mold coming up through the walls. And it was just a small leak, but every time they run water, it comes to the bottom. So because of the copper line where it exits. So at that point, they had to repair a good section of the basement because of the mold. When we say mold, they had to be cut out. The drywalls have to get cut out. So under sinks fixtures, again, mostly you're gonna see garbage disposals. They have the valves also, they tend to leak. Anytime you see that they turn like a greenish color or a bluish color, it's a sign that they're leaking, and they should be repaired or replaced. Around the toilet base, you're gonna sometimes see those brownish stains. It's a sign that the toilet is leaking either at the seal or it's leaking at the tank. There's a leak somewhere. So you definitely want to have that checked out, and anytime you see stains around the toilet, sometimes urine too. If it's not caulked properly and then they're missing each and every time, and then they could cause that brownish a stain around the toilet bowl. But it's still, either way, it has to be remedied to find out exactly the source of it. Yes.
We just real quick question. I know we're you got a little bit left to do. What about lead bends on some of these old houses? We still see a lot of them.
Yeah, especially under the toilets. The lead bends are very common. I mean, it's funny you saying that, because I've had a job I went to, and come to find out, this guy, the lead bends ran through actually went under the floor, and then they put a snake in there. They put a hole right through it because it's soft, and that's one thing you never do. You put a snake, you actually push it by hand, and then you start spinning it when it goes down further line, because it only goes so far. It just does the bend, and then it goes to the cast iron. And they put a hole in there. That's road. I'm just telling you, because this stuff a few gloves in there, and they walked away. And now you're leaking sewage into the ground and the foundation. So So the lead bends, they're soft. They do deteriorate over time. Anytime you see signs of they turn gray, when you have a leak around them, they can turn a grayish color. Then it's time to replace them. Cut out, put PVC, and then they're good to go.
Willie, can you talk about Orangeburg pipe? Because I don't know.
Yes.
I see it a lot.
Orangeburg pipe. It gets its name from Orangeburg, New York. It's made from wool pulp and pitch. Pitch is actually it's tar. So then they will put together layers like papers, layers like cardboard. It's just layers upon layers upon layers. They actually press them together. But over time, the layers start to pull away from each other. So then at that point, that's when they have lumps. When you go in line, you should actually see lumps in there. You see they have lumps in there, and then of course they do cause blockages. You can't snake them. You have to flush them out with the jetter. I mean, I have gentle nozzles that will go in there and flush them out. But technically, once you have that problem, it's time to replace the line. In Norwalk, you cannot repair the Orangeburg piping. Anytime you touch on it, whether it's a foot or more, you have to replace the entire thing. So you cannot repair Orangeburg pipe in Norwalk. They allow it here because like the job in Westport, it was Orangeburg pipe. The guys, they just repaired it, and the inspector came out and said, you know what, you're not digging the road, because he wouldn't allow them to dig the road. So they repaired, but the pipe was back pitch, but it was Orangeburg pipe. So, but they're very brittle. They were made from 1945 to 1972. They're absolute now.
Okay. Cleanouts.
Cleanouts. Typically, you see cleanouts under bathtub drains, under kitchen sink drains. You're not gonna rarely do you see anything under the washing machine, because the washing machine is normally close to the main. You see them under kitchen sink, bathroom sink, and tubs. If they're cast iron, I've never been able to remove one unless you want to break the pipe. But I always think them from the top. And then the PVC ones, yes. I mean, I tend not to sneak any lines from above my head, because when it's splashed, it gets all over me. So I don't want to do that. I always do them from the top down, because it just gets too messy.
Okay.
And of course, I talk about the cleanouts in the main also.
And then, can you talk about the equipment that you use, the camera equipment?
Yes, I use state-of-the-art rigid camera inspection. It's colored. It goes up to 200 feet. And plus also, if there's a problem anywhere within the line, I could pinpoint it exactly where it is, the depth within within plus 1 or minus 1 degree. So it's gonna be dead on. It's not like it's gonna be I think it's right. No, there's nothing such thing. It's gonna be pinned dead on. So when you dig, you know exactly how deep you're going and where it is. So again, it goes up to 200 feet, and if you have too many turns, I could go up to 200. But if you have like 3-4 bins in the line, you won't be able to go too far, because it's a rod. It's flexible. As I'm pushing it, I need to have not too many frictions. Otherwise, it won't be able to push through.
When do you recommend a camera inspection? Like, when should we, if we're doing an inspection?
I would say just about any house is 5 years older or more. And I'm going to tell you why. That's exactly the house I explained to you earlier, the one in Westport. The house is about 5 years old. It was built on an existing lot. So the line from the house to the curb is brand new, but it's tied to an existing line. And that's when at that point it's having a problem. So anytime the house is, even if it's 5 years or more, and I think it should be recommended, just to be sure that the line's in good shape.
Okay. Here's some before and afters. You want to comment?
Yes. So that's a line that was hydrojetted, and then especially with roots. That machine equipment is the best thing to use for it, because again, with the pressure, it annihilates the root strings. The snake won't be able to cut it, because every time the blade gets full, you got to pull it, empty it, go back in, and it gets to a point where it can't cut. But the jetter, because again, you have high pressure going through it, it will cut the roots. It's not the permanent fix, but it will clear the line for the time being, and then at the next step, we'll probably line it or replacement, depending on the condition of the line.
And number 2,
that's the Orangeburg I talked about. Yes, Orangeburg piping. Yes.
Okay. And inspector limitations. I'll take this over. We talked about this at the beginning of the webinar. The inspector is not required to inspect underground utility systems or components, including sewage disposal systems. And I think that was the inspector is not required to determine functional flow or check for active leaks. It's a little weird, but I guess technically, I've never been a big fan of the flow test on the exterior faucet, but we do check for functional flow. Narrative language samples, observable issues, slow drain, kitchen sink, recommend further evaluation by a licensed plumber. Cast iron waste pipes show surface rust at visible sections. These pipes usually typically have a 50 to 75-year lifespan and may nearing the end of their useful life. Then we could put in some general advisories. I put this in all my reports, not so much 5 years on a house that's older, but any house that's 25 or 30 years old, that you should get these lines scoped, especially if we see trees anywhere on the property. It's always a good idea to get that.
Absolutely, I agree.
And just to add to that, it says licensed plumber, but I usually recommend somebody like Willie, because that's what Willie does for a living, and not all plumbers do what Willie does. I'm not saying that they can't. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean,
Well, just to chime in, I had a guy in Fairfield. He bought a house, had a plumber come out to inspect the line. They never opened the clean out to begin with. 2 days later, the line backed up. 2 feet from the clean out, he had roots in the line. 2 feet. How can you miss that? He never opened the clean out, so they never did the work for him. Now he's stuck with it.
yeah, I mean, they're just because they're a plumber doesn't necessarily they know how to unclog drains and
Absolutely. It could be specialized, because drain cleaning itself is a specialty. You have to know what you're doing.
So
Again, this is some just common language here. You know, when you can directly observe an issue, if there's an active leak in the basement, you've got to point that out. But
Yeah.
you should also, you know, if you have you should have your agent, if it's the buyer's agent there, contact the listing agent, especially if the house is unoccupied, to let the owners know that, you know, they've got an active leak. It's always a good idea to do that.
Yes.
And using photos effectively in your report, wide shots, proper lighting, scale reference to show how big a crack is, document all angles, and you want to use, you know, a lot of the software has where you can add arrows and circles. Today's modern software is pretty good. And legal disclaimers and standard of practice. We've talked about this in report writing. It's really, really important not only to point something out, but to point out what you can't do. And as Willie said, you know, we're not taking off cleanouts. We're not seeing what's going on underneath. You know, I never want to be there removing a cleanout and throwing a camera in there. It's not what I do. So you got to put those disclaimers in there. And Willie, go ahead, Scott.
No, you made me think of it, Jim. Willie, as a home inspector, when I go in and I see a different clean out, like, you know, if it's an older house and that clean out has been touched, you know, some of them you never see them touch them, and
Yes.
you see a different cap on there, or you see one of those pressure fittings, or you see it undone, or you see a rotor-rooter or a sticker. In your opinion, does that mean something happened at some time? There was a clog somewhere.
Something happened at some point, because generally lines don't get clogged up if it's pitched properly, if there's no any mechanical issues. They don't get clogged because the bacteria actually eat everything in the pipe itself, so it won't get clogged. But anytime you see those signs, that means there was a problem in the line, and typically then I would definitely consider finding further what happened. So sometimes tree roots, sometimes it's the belly, sometimes it's the brake. That's the reason why the clog happened to begin with, and you want to find out why.
Do you ever find those whole house traps, not just inside, but outside, like in the property?
And New Haven, they have a few of them on the outside of the house. Also Southernton, I've seen a few of them outside the house. Sometimes they're buried. I've seen house traps that are buried in the ground until you start snaking. Then I have to locate them, which I've done in the past. Also, they just submit right over them.
So if it's midway in the property, can you see? Is there a way to get through that trap to get to the street? So
Well, you have to jet it. The snake won't go through it, but the jetter will clear it. But at that point, I would definitely consider removing it because it's inaccessible.
Hey, Willie, on this slide, maintenance tips for homeowners, scheduled maintenance. Do you recommend drain cleaning every 1 to 2 years for preventative care?
You
Is
know,
that a bit
and
much?
yeah, well, you know what? There's not too much out there other than enzymes. So you definitely don't want to use any type of chemicals that would actually damage the pipe itself, especially if you have iron pipes, cast iron pipes, steel pipes, or copper pipes, because they will attack the metal. Plastic, not so much, like PVC, not so much. But you know, any type of enzymes, you know, again, they're not the chemical, they're not harsh chemicals. So yes, you can use those every month or so, but I don't think they're quite effective, to be honest with you. Because I Rotorua, they used to have those gallons, but I think it was a waste of money. You know, I don't think they were very effective.
Would a homeowner call you to come out every 2 or 3 years to just do a general assessment, or just to clean the drains out? I mean,
They normally when storm happens, unless you have your line is
Right.
problematic, then I would, you know, if it's problematic, then yes, every year, every 2 years, depending. Normally that's with roots or kitchen sink that'll back pitch. Other than that, no, you probably never have to see.
okay.
Hey, Jim, how'd you get a picture of my wife there?
That's a big wrench. We have a question here. Some sewer systems have pumps and pump alarms. Are there any common problems, or are they pretty reliable?
The pumps are, you know, if you have a good pump, they could go anywhere from 15 to 30 years. They're pretty reliable, especially with grinders. Grinders actually they last anywhere from 15 to 30 years, and especially they won't get clogged up often. You know, especially feminine hygiene products or baby wipes, stuff of that nature, they grind them with no problem. But if you have a normal effluent pump, you know, a sewage pump, then you know with an impeller, they will get clogged up with baby wipes or feminine hygiene products. And then every night, because I have a school in Bridgeport, every few months they call me because it's a daycare. They keep flushing those baby wipes in there. So then that becomes problematic, you know?
Yeah. And that's what this slide's about, what not to flush: paper towels, feminine hygiene products, towels.
Nope, none of those.
None of it. And then routine maintenance, run water and rarely use fixtures to main seals and traps. I'll tell you a quick story. My sister she's an attorney out in New York. Never does, for some reason, doesn't like using a dishwasher. But every Thanksgiving, we'll use her dishwasher and it leaks every time.
Yeah, gasket becomes dry. Gasket becomes dry rotted because it needs to be. You need to have water on the bottom of it, otherwise it will dry out.
Not using it.
Yeah.
And then if you're not using, you know, a lot of older people, they'll not they'll, you know, if you have 2 levels of a house, say you have a ranch and you're not going into that finished basement and you're not using that toilet, or that water will siphon out of there and dry out. So it's good to flush those things and use them.
Yeah, every month or so, just flush, you know, run some water in there just to keep it primed, you know?
Yeah. Let's see. I think we ran over this. The home inspector noted slow drains and recommended camera inspector for closing. We did that. And then case 4 situation: new homeowners experienced immediate basement flooding after a heavy rain. No sewer inspection performed. The inspector had recommended one. Buyers declined to save money. Emerging camera inspector revealed complete collapse pipe under driveway. So
yeah,
that can stuff. That stuff happens.
Every time, yeah, I've seen it all too often. All too often.
Willie, have you ever seen when they still connect the downspouts in some of the cities where they get heavy rain and then you get a back up into the house and it's not necessary?
Yes. Well, you know, that's only for existing homes, but anytime you replace the sewer line, you have to disconnect it per code. You cannot connect it back. So then, like a lot of houses in Bridgeport, the storm drains are connected to the sewer, or if they have sump pumps also that are connected to sewer. Also, it could cause a problem. When you have a blockage, it just floods you out, you know, and then which is why it's not recommended to begin with. Okay, so then that's not a good thing to do, but people do to this day.
So we're at an hour now. If anybody has any questions, just chime in now. We got another minute or two. I don't know if Scott had anything left, but I just want to wrap up by thanking you for your time. This was extremely informative.
Absolutely.
And we're definitely going to put you. We have a page on our website for our speakers, so our inspectors can recommend you. I'll put your contact information on there.
Sounds good.
Hey, Willie, you
Good.
cover pretty much the whole state of, I'm just going to say mostly Connecticut, or where
Okay, yes, as long as, wherever the job is,
we'll go over the line,
Wherever the job is, baby.
go over the line if you had to, because we have some people from New York, right, and the Mass area.
It's a little far-fetched, because I'm not licensed in those states. I don't want to get in trouble, to be honest with you. I'm only licensed in Connecticut, so I don't want to cross lines,
But you have some people out that way.
I do know how people. Yeah, I do.
Okay, that's good.
Great.
Hey, Willie, the best. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Willie. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And I will get certificate.
Thank you, Willie.
tomorrow
Thank you.
morning.
All right.
Best man.
Thank you. Next time.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Gals.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you, Willie.
You got it. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Records, Willie, if you don't,
Yes, sir.
right after you.
Hey, Scott, I have one quick question.
All right, good. I just didn't hit the lead page. Go ahead.
On the recorded programs, how do you make those start up when you click on them?
And for us,
Like I see the list, I clicked on the swimming pool, but how do I make it start playing, I guess?
as soon as you click on it, it should open right up, and then you just hit. You'll hit just like it's on a not YouTube. Yeah, it's on a YouTube.
Yeah, go to YouTube.
Yeah.
I've never clicked on one, but I'll have Jim get back to you. It should be really simple. So it didn't
Yeah, 'cause
open.
I opened up on the web page and I saw it, but then nothing happened, I just
Yeah,
Is there a
I went on a bunch of times and I had no problem getting in, but I'm not sure.